Alright, we're live, ladies and germs, and Joey Logano is a fucking pompous idiot. Yep, we're starting out with that. I mean, am I surprised? No, I'm really not. So, I'm going to really enjoy tearing him a new asshole. So, let's go ahead and get into it. This is The Fuel. Alright, what is happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packerman, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel. We're going to be talking about the 2022 Goodyear 400 from the Darlington Raceway. Actually, give me 1 second here. Turn this off. Alright. So, needless to say, quite the interesting race that we saw at Darlington today. And of course it had a fuck finish because, you know, what else is new at this point? But yeah, like the title of the episode says, Joey Logano is a fucking dickhead. And I mean, I really shouldn't have to go into more detail than that, but evidently I do. Give me 1 second. Turn the air conditioner off, so that way it's not permeating throughout the frickin' review. But yeah, Joey Logano fucking sucks. I mean, am I surprised that he did what he did? Fuck no. For those that weren't watching, Logano basically did what he usually does. He basically ran through William Byron coming to the white flag. It wasn't on the white flag lap. It was coming to the white flag, and he said in his post-race interview, "Oh, you shouldn't have put me in the wall like that." I'm paraphrasing here. You know, so you should have expected payback. You know, that's just how it works. And all I can say is, fuck off, Logano. Like, he was getting pissy about Byron basically squeezing him up on the last restart. And all I gotta say is, if that's your excuse for absolutely fucking wrecking a guy, then you are a complete fucking Nimrod. Okay, and Byron even said himself, I mean, there was a camera rolling when he was talking with Jeff Gordon, and Byron basically called Logano a piece of shit. And I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. Now, I'm sure there'll be some people that'll be like, well, what's the difference between Logano doing it and Chastain doing it? If I really need to explain this one more time, I'm going to have a complete fucking meltdown. Okay? Here's the difference between what happened with Chastain at Circuit of the Americas and what we saw tonight. Okay? What happened with Chastain was he got bumped out of the way by Allmendinger. So while I don't totally agree with Chastain doing what he did, I understand it. I mean, I understand bump and runs to a certain degree, okay? I really do. You know, and if Logano really wanted to bump Byron out of the way, then fine, because by the end of that race, he was much quicker than Byron. I mean, he was taking chunks off of Byron's lead, and what the fuck was that? One second. Freaking cat's knocking shit over in the other room that I am currently working on. Because I want to turn it into my new studio, so my new recording studio for like YouTube and shit. So they knocked over something in there. That's what that loud bang was. You probably heard it. But like I was saying, I mean, I understand bump and runs to a certain extent, and let's be honest here. At the end of that race, Logano was catching Byron in a huge way. It seemed like Byron really burned up his tires, and Logano was taking huge chunks out of his lead. I mean, he was at times like a quarter of a second faster than Logano. So if he wanted to use the bumper to kind of nudge him out of the way, then fine. The problem is he didn't do the bump and run. He wrecked Byron for the most part. Because he didn't even try to make turn 3. I mean, he just went full bore right into the back of Byron. Byron gets crossed up and into the wall hard, which completely obliterates his right side. He has 2 flat right side tires, and he ends up finishing 13th because of it. Now, to me, that's complete fucking bullshit. Okay? That's not a bump and run, that's a dump and run. And I don't give a fuck, you know, what your excuse is. I mean, that's complete and total fucking bullshit. I mean, I wasn't in total agree with when Chastain did it, because he pretty much dumped Allmendinger. I mean, I understood it because Allmendinger gave him the bump, so he should have expected it back. But I mean, for Logano to try to come back and say, well, he squeezed me into the wall in the restart. Fuck yourself, Logano. Seriously, go fuck yourself with a steel pipe. Seriously. Fuck off with that bullshit excuse. Okay? Everybody was pushing off a turn 2 and squeezing a little bit here and there. I mean, at least he gave you a fucking lane to run in. And instead of, oh, I don't know, maybe passing him for the lead cleanly, or even just giving him a nudge so that way, you know, he at least finishes second or something like that, you just completely fucking wrecked the guy. Fuck yourself, Logano. I mean, am I surprised that he did this? Fuck no. Because this is not the first time we have dealt with this bullshit from him. I mean, remember all the way back when he got his second career win driving the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing when he punted Mark Martin out of the way at Pocono? Y'all remember that shit? I mean, that's when we kind of realized that, you know, this is going to be this guy's MO. And then you fast forward to 2015 at Kansas. You know, remember that shit? When Kenseth was racing for the lead and trying to get a spot into the next round of the playoff. And what does Logano do? Oh, he just poots Kenseth out of the way. And what did Kenseth do? 2 races later, he paid him back in a big fucking way, and rightfully deserved. Because that was complete fucking bullshit then. And then at Martinsville, 2018, Truex passes Logano for the lead, coming to the white flag, clean. And Logano punts him out of the way to get the win. Now, in that case, people were like, well, he was trying to go for the... I mean, it won him the championship. Oh, I don't give a fuck. Okay, I don't consider that good driving etiquette. Okay, I don't give a fuck. Okay, if Truex would have punted him out of the way and then Logano returned the favor, then fine, fair game. But that was not the case. Truex passed him clean, and what does Logano do? He just, you know, fails to find the brake in turn 3. And here we are yet again in 2022 with this fucking bullshit. And Logano, with a faster car, mind you, probably one of the fastest cars all frickin' day, was running Byron down in a hurry. I mean, he could have easily passed him for the lead. And that's what pisses me off the most about all this, okay? Logano, for the love of God, has all the fucking talent in the world as a NASCAR driver. He wouldn't have the number of wins that he has. He wouldn't have a Daytona 500, and he wouldn't have a Cup championship if he was a total fucking hack. Okay? He knows how to drive a race car, but there are just times when he does this shit. And, you know, some people are like, well, you know, you loved it when Earnhardt did it. No, I didn't. I mean, when Earnhardt did that shit, I was all over his ass, too. So fucking try to tell me that, oh, you know, you would have loved it if Earnhardt did it. No, I fucking didn't. It was dirty as shit when he did it. I don't give a fuck. Alright? I'm sorry that I have fucking standards that I actually adhere to, unlike 95% of this fucking fan base. Bunch of fucking nonsense. And then Logano tries to pull that fucking excuse when they were interviewing him. No, fuck you, Logano. Seriously, fuck you. And Byron had every right to call him out and basically called him a fucking moron and an idiot. And, you know, that's just the way he drives. He has a chance at a win, and he, that's what he resorts to. Well, yeah. This is not the first time we've been to this fucking rodeo with Logano. I mean, guy has all the fucking talent in the world, and he resorts to that shit. I mean, there's a reason why he had a 40 fucking race winning streak, or losing streak, coming into today. And no, the clash at the Coliseum does not count. It's an exhibition race. We're talking points races. The last win he had before today was the Bristol Dirt Race last year, and that was 40 races ago. So, I am not on board with how Logano won tonight. So, fuck that shit. You know, it's just... Oh, my God. And... This shit is the reason why I will never respect Logano as a driver. I mean, I will give him credit where credit is due, but I'm sure as fuck not going to give him credit tonight. Fuck that noise. I can understand bump and running to a certain degree, but what that was not a bump. It was a dump. I mean, and not only did he take Byron out of a chance at maybe a runner-up finish, I mean, he took him completely out of the top 10. Byron ended up finishing 13th. Clearly, Logano has not learned his fucking lesson. The guy is a complete fucking Nimrod. I mean, his head meat is so fucking thick, you couldn't drill through it with a fucking screwdriver. And again, it is so fucking frustrating because this guy, even though I may not like the guy, I can respect the fact that he is one of the most talented stock car drivers in the world. That is not in question. But what he did tonight, no. I won't co-sign that whatsoever. And, you know, the fact that there were people defending this shit just fucking makes me sick. I mean, I feel about as sick as my cats right now. I mean, they're all suffering from a fucking cold right now. And I feel about as fucking sick as them, you know, seeing, you know, how people are defending what Logano did. No, fuck that shit. You know, if there's two things I believe in as far as racing leagues are concerned, it's integrity and fair play. And what I saw tonight was fucking none of that shit. So no, Logano can fuck himself as far as I'm concerned. That's my opening rant for tonight, and pretty obvious why that I was ranting. But with all that out of the way, we're gonna be talking more about it later. Trust me. Let's go ahead and get into the news of the week, because there was actually quite a few news stories that kind of broke over the week. So let's get into that. Alright, so as we usually do, we start out with the ratings for the previous race. And they were down quite a bit. And it was, of course, Dover. It pulled in 944,000 viewers, which is, for some people, it was pretty alarming. But it was on FS1. Again, if it's on FS1, it's not going to see a whole lot of viewership. I really wish NASCAR and Fox would fucking realize this. Putting it on FS1 is just not going to fucking work as far as viewership is concerned. I mean, and this proves it. I mean, it was also on a Monday, which also didn't help. But, yeah, I mean, even on FS1, that's still not a good number, considering that the previous race that was on FS1 pulled in almost 2 million. So, I mean, that was basically cut in half. And I think this tonight's race was also on FS1, and then next week's race at Kansas is also going to be on FS1. I don't get it, but, you know, television networks. I mean, that's all you can really say. This came as a bit of a shock, though. L.W. Wright. For those of you who don't know who that is, he basically defrauded his way into a cup ride in the 1982 Talladega 500. He basically, you know, he was asking basic questions, you know, from other drivers. He basically bought a ride and basically wrote bad checks for the most part, and basically defrauded his way into a cup ride. It only lasted 13 laps for him, and before the race was even over, he had pretty much skipped town. There was a police investigation into the matter, but he was never caught. And as it turned out, he finally resurfaced on the day, 40 years to the day, that he committed that act at Talladega. Hold on one second. Where the fuck was this at? It was filed to ESPN. Crazy racing news this morning. L.W. Wright, the so-called D.B. Cooper of NASCAR and darling of internet conspiracy theorists, has resurfaced exactly 40 years after his lone Cup Series start at Talladega and reported vanishing. It says 1972, but it's actually 1982. This is on ESPN.com, and it is it is some of the craziest shit ever. Because I mean, this was one of the longest-running mysteries, you know, in NASCAR history. And then L.W. Wright, I mean, he produces the fire suit, you know, that he wore as well, which is just absolutely insane. So let's go into this here. This is on ESPN.com. The story of L.W. Wright and one of NASCAR's enduring mysteries. Has NASCAR's D.B. Cooper been found? Here at the start of the week when a new NASCAR Hall of Fame class will be announced, a member of the Sports Hall of Infamy has broken a 4-decade silence. I said that straight away. It's almost a mile long. How much can that car gain before you go into that turn? I said, Lord, I'm down here, but I'm going to need some help, and I didn't tell nobody else that. On this very date, 40 years ago, which was back on March the 2nd, a man named L.W. Wright competed at stock car racing's highest level on its fastest racetrack, starting 36th and finishing 39th in one of NASCAR's crown jewel events, the Winston 500 at Talladega Superspeedway. Prior to the race, no one in the Cup Series garage had heard of Wright, but the sanctioning body had for some reason accepted his racing resume on little more than the word of the Tennessee trucking businessman and a public relations group that had pitched on his behalf. As soon as the race ended, he reportedly abandoned the Chevy Monte Carlo he had purchased for the event and disappeared. He has spent the past 4 decades evading everyone from NASCAR officials to private investigators hired by the people he still owed for that race car to a lot of lawyers and a growing number of would-be amateur auto racing sleuths, eager to meet the man who somehow conned his way onto a racetrack alongside the likes of Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, and race winner Darrell Waltrip. As Tennessee Sports Writers Hall of Fame member Larry Wood wrote later that summer, if he could have driven as fast as he talked, L.W. Wright would be a NASCAR champion now. Over time, Wright's story has become NASCAR legend, especially in the conspiracy-obsessed corners of the internet. Woody himself revisited the mystery in a story in the Anniston Star 2 weeks ago, but after years of efforts from journalists to find Wright, he was finally located by another longtime motorsports writer, Rick Houston, who worked at the legendary Grand National scene and now hosts the NASCAR history-based The Scene Vault podcast. Houston spent an entire year searching for, locating, and then ultimately persuading Wright to finally tell his story. On an agreed-upon date in mid-April, Houston was ushered into an undisclosed location where Wright, now 73, was waiting. Cat. Quit. Houston was understandably skeptical about meeting a man who has worked very diligently for nearly half a century to elude anyone from the NASCAR community. Because of that, the writer was very thorough about positively identifying Wright. Over the years, many have hypothesized that the one-off racer's name was never actually L.W. Wright, But armed with a stack of back issues of Grand National Scene and photos from that day in 1982, Houston is positive the man he interviewed is the one in those images. The uniform Wright brought with him for the meeting was also a perfect match, all the way down to the stitching. If you can find somebody that said I owed them $30,000, you tell them I will face them, Wright says to Houston, denying any wrongdoing. I want to see who they are, and I want to know how it come about. If it makes them stutter, then you know what I'm talking about, okay? In failing health, Wright seems to want to set the record straight. Skeptics will no doubt wonder if stock car racing's most infamous con man is to be trusted. There's even confusion about the post-Talladega disappearance. He is listed as it did not qualify at the following weekend's race in Nashville, but no one recalls seeing him, and neighbors reported he had shown up at his house the night after the Talladega event, grabbed some belongings, including some of theirs that he had already stolen, and drove away, never to be seen again. Regardless of who said what and what really happened, all will be stunned that Wright has resurfaced. I had a lot of friends in country music, he says on the podcast, and I didn't use any of them other than what they wanted to do. The story of Wright's lone race began with, well, that same story. In the spring of 1982, a publicist contacted newspapers in Tennessee, pitching a rags to riches tale about Wright. He was described as a 33-year-old short track racer with 43 starts in NASCAR's Busch Grand National, now Xfinity Series, who was going to make his Cup Series debut at Talladega with backing from country music superstars he had worked for, building buses and trucks for touring, including Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard, and T.G. Shepard, who was already involved in stock car racing sponsorship. The team was titled Music City Racing. Wright applied for a NASCAR license, at the time costing $115, and also paid the $100 fee to file an entry for the Talladega event. 1 second. Need to get a drink. According to news reports at the time, Wright then convinced Nashville-based Space Age Marketing and its owner, Bernie Terrell, to loan him $30,000 to purchase a race car, $7,500 to cover additional expenses, and a big rig truck to haul the car south to Talladega. That car was purchased from local racing hero Cuckoo Marlin and his son Sterling, a future two-time Daytona 500 winner, for $20,700. Damn it, cat. Yeah. Alright, where'd that go? Here we go. Fucking cat. For $20,700, nearly all of which was paid in cash, and the remainder covered via check. Wright wrote a lot of checks to Goodyear for tires, to other teams for parts, and even spent $168 to have racing jackets made for his crew. Wright says he asked the Marlins to paint the all-red car black and give it the number 34, because 34 come from Wendell Scott, Wright explains now. Speaking of NASCAR's first full-time black racer who competed during the 1960s and early 1970s. He was one who already tried to race but didn't have the means or the money, so I picked up number 34. Plus, I was 34 years old when I started racing. Wright tells Houston he also asked Sterling Marlin to come down to oversee his pit stops and race strategy to educate his new team for the future they plan to have. Marlin, who has always said it was his idea to follow Wright in the car to Talladega, was immediately skeptical. And Sterling was like, hell, I had never heard of this guy. He explained in 2019, saying Wright claimed to have won a lot of short track races in Virginia, but didn't seem to know the names of any Virginia racers, including living legend Tommy Houston. And if you're hearing that, my cat is, sniffling. So I decided to go down there with him, kind of be his crew chief, just keep an eye on him. As soon as we got there, it all got even fishier. Marlin says Wright spent the weekend asking questions that any real racer would have already known the answer to, and that Wright knew the answers to none of them. When the story ran in a Nashville newspaper leading to the Winston 500, T.G. Shepard's camp immediately released a statement that he had never heard of L.W. Wright. Wright responded with an apology explaining that he had prematurely announced the sponsorship. He also said that there had been some confusion about his experience, that he hadn't actually run 43 Busch Series races, but rather lower division events that were run at Busch Series racetracks. Still, NASCAR allowed him to make a qualifying run at its largest, fastest track. And Wright recalls that he had never seen that track. I remember pulling into the infield that day and standing at the end of the track and looking down it, and I looked over at my brother, a member of the crew, and said, Lord have mercy, there ain't no way you think about holding that car the pedal flat on the floor all the way around this track. In a conversation prior to his death in 2010, Jim Hunter, the former NASCAR executive and Talladega Superspeedway president, cited Alabama's right to work laws as handcuffs to the sanctioning body's efforts to keep Wright off the racetrack, located 50 miles east of Birmingham. Besides, the damn guy did qualify for the race. He did indeed, with a speed of 187.37 miles per hour. at the same time that Benny Parsons became the first Cup Series driver to top 200 miles an hour in pole qualifying. But Wright also crashed in practice. Leading up to the 500-mile race, he says he was approached with unsolicited advice from a pair of future NASCAR Hall of Famers. First, Bobby Allison said not to feel bad if he didn't make the field, but said, "Well, you're cocky enough." Then, according to Wright, Dale Earnhardt spoke with him after practice, advising, "When you get out there, you get on the back of someone who had been here before and follow them, stay with them, and then make your move." Once the green flag fell, the only move L.W. Wright made was to get out of the way. Unable to maintain the minimum speed of 180 miles an hour, he was ordered by NASCAR to retire to the garage after 13 laps. He finished 39th of 40 cars, earning $1,545. And that, according to reports at the time, is when he vanished. The checks he written did not vanish. According to Sterling Marlin and all of the investors in Music City Racing interviewed by newspaper reporters at the time, Wright's checks were returned due to insufficient funds. "Don't ask me if I was surprised," Marlin said in 2019, "because I was not." Houston worked for a decade at the newspaper known lovingly as Simply Seen, the week publication that was the must-read of the stock car racing industry and fandom alike. Since the paper was shuttered in 2010, Houston has dedicated his career to digitizing back issues as well as interviewing heroes and now anti-heroes of NASCAR's past. But he has never had an experience like this one. Houston says, "My takeaway from this is that LW is seeking to finally get a burden off of his shoulders to finally get his story out there. In the grand scheme of things in the rearview mirror, what he did wasn't truly all that bad. And I will say that the story we have heard all these years and the story he tells us now, they're not the same story. Is there closure? I don't know. But to sit there and listen to him finally talk about it to a lot of NASCAR fans, that's a day we thought would never come." Wow. I mean, that is quite the story, to say the least. And just absolutely unbelievable. So if you want to read the story, I think there's also a podcast regarding it. Look it up. The story is on ESPN.com, so be sure to check it out because it's one hell of a read. Next up, William Byron, who we're going to be talking a lot about in this review, signed a 3-year contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports, which, I mean, considering the fact that he's already won twice this year, shouldn't really be that big of a surprise. Rick Hendrick on signing William Byron to a 3-year extension. "As impressed as I am by his innate ability inside a race car, I admire his character and maturity even more. William is on an amazing trajectory, and I believe he's only just begun to scratch the surface of his potential." And I certainly agree with that. And then Byron says, "I'm so thankful to continue racing for Mr. H, Jeff, and Hendrick Motorsports. They've supported me through my path to the Cup Series and the growth process. Now with the team we've built together, I'm excited to keep pursuing race wins and playoff success. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season and the years to come." Yeah, we kept saying that he's probably going to be a championship contender by this point at the end of the year. So with 2 race wins and probably should have had a third. I mean, I think the sky's the limit right now for William Byron. And then we had a couple of things that happened in the truck race that were of note. First of all, NASCAR officiating takes a shit on itself once again. NASCAR misses the cone ruling on Ty Majeski. Now, I believe it was either the next to last restart or the final restart, where they have the choose rule, where you have an orange box in the middle, kind of like the cone rule that you see at local short track races, and you have to go either to the inside or the outside lane. You get a choice. Well, usually there's a penalty if you run over the box, which Ty Majeski clearly did, and you could clearly see it on the broadcast. And yet NASCAR never issued a penalty to Ty Majeski. Like, how in the actual fuck do you miss a call like that? Like, that's unacceptable. I'm sorry, that is unacceptable to me. And it just further drives home the fact as to why I don't trust NASCAR officialdom. Because 95% of the time, they fucking suck. And this was just another case. And Ty Majeski actually ended up with a top 5 finish at the end of the truck race. So, yeah, NASCAR fucked that one up for sure. And then, during the Victory Lane interview when John Hunter Nemechek won the truck race, and then during the interview on the front stretch, some jackass decides to throw a full can of beer at John Hunter Nemechek, and it actually lands on the roof of the truck, narrowly missing not only John Hunter Nemechek, but I believe it was Jamie Little who was interviewing him on the front stretch, and a cameraman that was also out there as well. So, I mean, that's just a bunch of fucking nonsense, dude. If you're just gonna do shit like that, then don't even come to the fucking racetrack. Like, you're gonna get someone seriously injured doing that shit, and that was extremely lucky for John Hunter that he didn't get nailed by a full can of fucking beer from a jackass fan in the grandstands. I mean, I honestly hope they found that guy and just absolutely fucking beat the shit out of him. Because you just don't do fucking bullshit like that. And that's just my opinion on the matter. But that's all that we got for the news of the week. Definitely the LW Wright story was definitely, that was quite crazy. What do you want, Ghost? What do you want? Shithead. Yeah, you're not feeling good, are you? A lot of my cats aren't feeling good. But let's go ahead and get into this review, shall we? Alright, so we're getting into the review for the 2022 Goodyear 400 at the Darlington Raceway, which was throwback weekend, by the way. Pretty cool paint schemes. Trackhouse, I think, was the clear winner, although there were a lot of pretty good paint schemes for throwback weekend. Of course, this is our 137th episode of The Fuel. Title, of course, is Joey Logano is a dickhead, because he is. So, getting into things. Stages broke down like this. Stage 1 was 90 laps. Stage 2, 95 laps. And Stage 3, 108 laps. Excuse me, little one. I need my book of notes here. Please and thank you. So there were several drivers that had to go to the rear. Hamlin had a rear diffuser problem, so they had to get that fixed, so he had to go to the rear. Harvick and Elliott had practice crashes, so they had to go to the backup cars, so they had to go to the rear of the field. And BJ McLeod also had to go to the rear of the field. Not exactly sure why he had to go to the rear. That wasn't exactly... I couldn't exactly find out why that was. But anywho, stage number 1 was 90 laps. Joey Logano starts from the pole. Logano and Larson were side by side for the lead all the way through turn 4, where Larson gets in front and leads lap number 1. Ow! Watch the claws, cat. Damn. We got our first caution right away on lap 3. When Keselowski gets turned by Elliott off of turn 2 after Keselowski checked up from LaJoie nudging Hamlin a little bit. So it was kind of a chain reaction kind of deal, where Keselowski checked up to avoid getting into the mess in front of him, and he ends up getting nailed by Elliott. So it was just a chain reaction deal there. In that case, he got put into a lazy spin, but was able to recover and keep going. Excuse me, cat. So Larson leads on the restart. Logano gets a great restart and tries to challenge for the lead, but can't make the pass. And at this point, it was just kind of a snooze fest for the first part of this race. It was kind of like... It would get better later on, though. Then we have our second caution on lap 31, which was the competition caution. They did this one because they had overnight rains. So they basically put out a competition caution to check tire wear. Everyone comes in for service, obviously. Logano wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Larson nearly gets stuck in a JGR sandwich between Kyle Busch and Truex, but gets through and keeps the second position. Kyle Busch moves up to third. Byron gets by Reddick for the 8th position. Larson starts closing back in on Logano for the race lead. Chastain gets by Blaney for the 5th position. Kyle Busch gets by Larson for 2nd after Larson had to check him in turn 2. JJ Lee smacks the wall in turn 2 and limps to pit road, no caution. Chastain gets by Truex for 4th after Truex gets way loose off of turn 2, which happens quite a bit in this race. And then we got our third caution on lap 54 when Larson spins in turn 4 after racing side by side with Kyle Busch. He's up alongside of him, but he tries to turn it to kind of keep it off of Kyle Busch, but he ends up spinning himself, which may or may not have screwed him over later on. We'll get to that in a minute. Everyone comes in for service, and Logano wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Kyle Busch stays side by side for the lead for the entire first lap of the restart. After 2 laps side by side, Kyle Busch finally snags the lead for our first pure lead change on lap 62. Christopher Bell gets by Truex and Byron and moves up to 4th. Kyle Busch, Logano, and Ross Chastain within half a second of each other for the race lead. Logano slides past Kyle Busch for the lead, with Chastain moving up to 2nd, so we have our second pure lead change on lap 81. Buescher smacks the wall off of turn 2. He had the Matt Kenseth tribute scheme. Chastain tries to challenge Logano for the lead. Bell gets by Busch for third as the 18 starts sliding back. Didn't seem to be a good long run car. And Logano wins stage 1. Kyle Busch does hang on to finish 4th though. So everyone comes in for service and Logano wins the race off of pit road. So now we come to stage number 2, which was 95 laps. So Logano leads the start of stage 2. Chastain gets big loose off of turn 2, but completes the pass on Kyle Busch for second. And I mean, he got way loose. Truex, Byron, and Eric Jones battle for the 4th position. Byron was rocking a Jeff Gordon paint scheme, while Eric Jones was rocking a Richard Petty tribute scheme. Larson pits and has engine problems and is forced to retire early. Ryan Blaney reports possible vibration in the front of the car. Chastain tries to challenge Logano for the lead on lap 122. So, again, not much going on at the start of this stage. Austin Cindric kicks off green flag stops on lap 130. Truex gets by Chastain for second. Logano pits from the lead on lap 136. Truex cycles back with the race lead because he pitted earlier than Logano. And Reddick jumps all the way up to second because he pitted way earlier and took advantage of the tires. Chastain gets by Logano for third. LaJoie goes hard into the turn 2 wall. It almost looked like he lost a tire, but was able to limp it back to pit road. No caution. Reddick has to make an unscheduled pit stop on lap 161. He was reporting a vibration. Didn't know if a tire was coming apart. Chastain nearly passes Truex for the lead, but Truex holds him off. Chastain finally gets past the 19 in turn 3 for a third pure lead change on lap 165. And then we get our 4th caution on lap 166 when Keselowski looks like he blows a right front tire and slams the turn 2 wall hard and collects Kyle Busch, who has the left front toe link destroyed. Didn't even look like he even hit the 6 car all that hard, but as Bob Pockrass reported, the toe link is probably the weakest part on these cars, and even just a little contact can cause that toe link to bend and break, and that's exactly what happened. Kyle Busch couldn't get the car to the garage area, so he just decides to get out of the car and leave it in the middle of the pit lane, which was not very cool. I mean, honestly, he was the primary contender for reject of the race because of that, but after what happened at the finish of this race, not so much anymore. Everyone comes in for service, and Chastain wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Hamlin up to 4th after having to start from the rear of the field. We have a battle for 5th between Jones, Byron, and Bell. Byron starts challenging Hamlin for the 4th position, and Chastain wins stage number 2. And then BJ McLeod catches on fire underneath the car, which was kind of crazy. And we actually had 2 of those during this race. Everyone comes in for service, and Hamlin wins the race off pit road. So we come to stage number 3, which is 108 laps. Hamlin leads the start of stage 3, but then we immediately get our 5th caution on lap 195 when Chastain, while battling Hamlin for the lead, gets loose off of turn 2 and spins and hits the inside wall hard, ending his run at a 3rd race win of the season. Still, I think Chastain is going to be one of the favorites for the championship if the one team keeps up this performance. I mean, they've been dynamite this year for the most part. Hamlin leads on the restart. Logano gets a great jump and takes the lead on the restart on the inside lane. Elliott and Harvick gets by Jones for 8th and 9th. Suarez gets by Almirola for 5th. Almirola starts dropping back a little bit. Hamlin starts challenging Logano for the lead and takes it in turn 1 for a 4th pure lead change on lap 209. Logano closes back in on Hamlin after several laps, though. Bell and Suarez battle for 5th, and then Elliott, while those two are battling, goes 3 wide with them and nabs a 2-piece. So that was a good move by Elliott. Several cars kick off green flag pit stops with 65 laps to go, which was a little bit early. So it started the debate of 2 stops versus 1. Elliott has to check up off turn 2 and loses 5th to Christopher Bell. Logano and Byron come in with 56 laps to go, trying to do the undercut on Hamlin. Briscoe bounces off the wall but keeps going, no caution. Hamlin pits with 50 laps to go, 6 laps later than Logano and Byron. Reddick cycles out with the race lead with 44 laps to go. Stenhouse Jr. was also up to 4th at this point with 40 to go, but then we get our 6th caution on lap 254, which throws a monkey wrench into the whole deal. Alex Bowman smacks the wall in turn 2, and his car also goes up in flames under the car. Wonder if he also blew a right front tire. Everyone comes in for service. Logano wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. And then we get our 7th caution on lap 260, and this was a pretty big one. Truex has to check up in turns 1 and 2, and coming off of turn 2 gets put in the middle of 3 wide and pushes up into Stenhouse, who was on his outside, and spins. And several others spin as well and causes a pretty big pile up. Truex was involved, Kurt Busch, Eric Jones, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, so both of the 2311 cars were involved. Boy, what a beating that team has been taking lately. Hamlin was involved. He can't seem to catch any luck. He only has 1 top 10 finish this year. Can you believe that shit? Custer was involved. Blaney was involved. Elliott was involved a little bit, but it was only in the rear end. But all were involved in this accident. 9 cars in total. That was our final caution of the day. So Logano Logano leads on the restart. Byron is able to take the lead on the restart, and this is probably the one where Logano says that, he squeezed him up a little bit coming off of turn 2, which, again, Logano, fuck yourself on that one. While Justin Haley jumps up to 4th on the restart. Where the fuck did Haley come from? By the way, attrition was pretty big in this race. I mean, there were 13 cars that were out of the race by the time this race concluded. There were only 23 cars left at the end of this race. So Logano tries to close the gap on Byron for the lead, but was holding steady at about a second or so. Michael McDowell up to 9th with 22 laps to go, so good run for him. Reddick tries to close in on Logano for 2nd. Elliott and Harvick, who are also close buddies, battle it out for the 5th position. And then all of a sudden, Logano closes the gap on Byron with 4 laps to go. Like I said, he starts taking chunks out of Byron's lead. And then coming to the white flag, Logano basically forgets where the brakes are and punts Byron out of the way, puts him into the wall. I hesitate to call this a pure lead change, but the caution never came out. So that was our 5th pure lead change on lap 292 coming to the white flag. And Joey Logano wins the Goodyear 400 after wrecking Byron's shit. And he got a lot of boos from the fans after that one. And then, of course, he tried to say that, well, you're going to get that back if you put me in the wall, which, again, fuck yourself, Logano. And then Byron afterwards was like, yeah, he's an idiot and a moron, and, he can't win the right way. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what Byron said. And I agree with Byron, because that was fucking bullshit. And I already ranted about that at the beginning of this review, so if you want to hear my total feelings on what Logano did, go back to the beginning of this review and watch, because I pretty much tore him a new asshole. But with that out of the way, let's go to the stats and awards for this race. So total laps, it was 293 lap race, 95 and 108. Overall lead changes, we had 24 overall lead changes. Most of those were during green flag pit stops and restarts, but that's still a pretty good number overall. 5 of those were pure lead changes. We had 7 total caution flags, which was down from 11 from last week. And we had 2,569 green flag passes, which comes out to an average of 10.4 per green flag lap. Pretty good. Your lap award leader was Joey Logano with 107 laps, which brings us to the star of the race. And this one is going to go to Justin Haley. Haley and that 31 team have really been struggling all season long. Not really been a factor whatsoever, but comes home with a 4th place finish. Actually, it was a 3rd place finish. It was supposed to be a 4th place finish until Byron got his shit wrecked, and then it ended up being a podium finish. So good job to Justin Haley and that 31 team coming home with their first top 10 and their first top 5 of the season. So round of applause to Justin Haley and the 31 team for Kaulig Racing. And my reject of the race, of course, Joey Logano. Yeah, he won the race, but the way he did it was total fucking bullshit. It was completely unnecessary. As fast as he was closing on William Byron for the race win, it was completely unnecessary for him to do that shit. So Logano can fuck himself straight to hell on that one. Race results and point standings. Dickhead comes home with the race win. Tyler Reddick comes home in second. He led 10 laps on the day. Justin Haley, like I said, finished third after starting 29th. Kevin Harvick started 35th and finished 4th. Chase Elliott started 34th and finished 5th. So for the guys starting at the back, they did pretty damn good. Christopher Bell comes home with a 6th place finish. Michael McDowell, if he had another top 10 run, I think he's been in the top 10 3 of the last 4 races. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with a top 10. Austin Dillon got caught for speeding twice in this race, but still salvages a top 10. And Daniel Suarez, who hadn't had a top 10 finish since the West Coast swing, comes home with a 10th place finish. Excuse me. Which brings us to the point standings. We are at the 1/3 mark of the season, and Chase Elliott continues to lead the way for the regular season title. He leads by 65 points over both William Byron and Ryan Blaney. Joey Logano, Dickhead, moves up to 4th. Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. are all tied for 5th. You have Alex Bowman in 8th, Kyle Larson in 9th, Christopher Bell rounding out the top 10. And the rest of the top 10, or the top 20, excuse me. Kevin Harvick, Eric Almirola, Chase Briscoe, Austin Dillon, Tyler Reddick, Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric, Chris Buescher, and Justin Haley moves up into the top 20 with his 3rd place finish today. So, NASCAR standings with F1 points, my little shits and giggles kind of deal. First up, the Trucks Series point standings as they run as of right now. Ben Rhodes did not have a very good day at Darlington. Only scored 2 points and got wrecked. Well, actually, wrecked himself. John Hunter Nemechek gained a bunch on him with his victory. Then you have Zane Smith in 3rd. Those are the only guys with over 100 points. Chandler Smith is in 4th. Carson Hocevar moves up to 5th because he's had back-to-back runner-up finishes. Ty Majeski, who got lucky with a no call from NASCAR. Kyle Busch is only running a partial schedule. He's 7th, and Christian Eckes is tied for that spot with him. Stuart Friesen and Parker Kligerman round out the top 10, and the rest of the top 20. Grant Enfinger, Tanner Gray, Matt Crafton, who was actually disqualified from Darlington because his truck was too low in the front. He actually had a 5th place finish, but that was no more. He's 13th. Corey Heim, 14th. Ryan Preece, 15th, who's only running a partial schedule. William Byron, who's only running a partial schedule. Derek Kraus, Tyler Ankrum, Johnny Sauter, and Matt DiBenedetto. That is your top 20 in NASCAR truck standings with F1 points. Xfinity points. Noah Gragson gained a shit ton on AJ Allmendinger. He actually gained 26 points on him because Gragson won both of the first 2 stages and finished 2nd in the race. While AJ Allmendinger got, points, but lost a bunch. Ty Gibbs is still 3rd. Justin Allgaier with his win moves up to 4th. You have Josh Berry in 5th, Sam Mayer, Brandon Jones, and Austin Hill. Those are the drivers with 100 points. Noah Gragson, the first one, over 200 points. Then you have Riley Herbst in 9th, who's actually improved quite a bit from last year. Last year, he was just a wrecking ball. This year, he's actually been doing pretty good. I think this is his 4th or 5th top 10 in a row. And he finished 3rd in the Xfinity race. And Landon Castle rounds out the top 10. The rest of the top 20, John Hunter Nemechek, Daniel Hamrick, Cole Custer, Trevor Bayne, Ryan Sieg, Anthony Alfredo, Sheldon Creed, Jade Buford, Jeffrey Earnhardt, and Brandon Brown. And here are the Cup point standings leaving Darlington. Ross Chastain continues to lead the way. He actually gained some points on Byron, who was looking to gain a shit ton on him, but it ended up being the other way around. Chase Elliott is 3rd with 147. Kyle Larson did not gain any points today, so he ends up dropping a spot. Dickhead moves up to 5th. Ryan Blaney in 6th. Kyle Busch 7th. Alex Bowman 8th. Christopher Bell 9th. Those are the only drivers over 100 points. Then you have Martin Truex Jr. in 10th. Rest of the top 20. Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, who somehow keeps sneaking out top 10s and top 5s. Denny Hamlin, who's only had 1 top 10 the entire season. That was his win at Richmond. Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, Eric Almirola, Kurt Busch, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is your top 20 in the NASCAR standings with F1 points. As for my final rating for the Goodyear 400, this was actually a pretty solid race, and even though I'm not in agreement with what Dickhead did with the finish of that race, I mean, it was still a pretty exciting finish for the most part. I mean, it was interesting. It's going to get a lot of people talking, that's for sure. A lot of lead changes, lots of passes. I mean, it's a racer's racetrack, and it certainly showed it here today. It got a bit messy in the third stage, especially with that big wreck at the end. But I mean, overall, I thought this was a pretty solid race. I enjoyed it for the most part, and you know, it's got a lot of people talking. So I would say I'm going to give the Goodyear 400 at Darlington. I'm going to give it a solid 7 on the fuel gauge. So, like I said, I thought it was a solid race. Pretty good, interesting finish. I mean, that's all you can really ask for from Darlington. Because a lot of times Darlington just doesn't produce good racing, but I think it did for the most part. I mean, it was pretty boring at the beginning, but it definitely heated up as the race went along. Especially when you got into tire strategies and all that good shit. But that is going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. It's certainly pretty heated near the beginning of this one. But understandably so, because what Logano did was fucking bullshit, and I'm going to stand by that. Next race is Kansas next week. And then I believe it's All-Star race time, and then the Coke 600, if memory serves me correctly. Let's check the schedule real quick for the month of May. Okay, where the hell is this? Star Cup Series news. Schedule. There we go. Alright, so next race is the Advent 400 at Kansas Speedway. Then yes, it is the NASCAR All-Star Race at Texas, and then the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway Memorial Day weekend. And then the final 2 races for Fox are going to be both on FS1. June 5th is the Enjoy Illinois 300 presented by Ticket Smarter at Worldwide Technology Raceway, which is formerly known as Gateway. And then the Toyota Seymour 350 at Sonoma, and that will end Fox's coverage for the season. And then on June the 26th, coverage switches over to NBC's side of things at the Nashville Super Speedway for the Ally 400. So that's what's coming up in the month of the rest of the month of May and into the month of June. And actually, the lone off weekend is going to be in June. It's going to be in between the transition from Fox to NBC. So June the 12th will be at Sonoma, and then we get our 1 week off this year, and then we go to Nashville on June the 26th to have a straight run through the end of the season. So that's what the schedule looks like. So that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the Packer Man signing out. See you later. Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you jackweeds.